Senator Cotton, you are recognized.
General Whiting, I want to return to Senator Reed's line of questioning about commercial space launch and any kind of risk it might pose us. You called the commercial space industry a, quote, massive advantage. I assume you're saying it's a massive advantage against our chief adversaries in this domain, China and Russia?
That's correct, Senator.
Can you give us a sense of scale of how big the advantage? Well, first off, commercial space launch. To be precise here, we're talking about ULA, the United Launch Alliance, and SpaceX, correct?
That has been the providers, and now Blue Origin has recently demonstrated New Glenn. Yes, sir.
So can you give us a sense of scale of just how massive an advantage we have over, say, China because of ULA and SpaceX?
Yes, Senator. And while I don't have the numbers, I can qualitatively describe those. If you go back probably 5 to 10 years, the number of launches we were executing compared to those in China or Russia looked very similar. But over time, the U.S. has massively increased the number of launches, and that equates to what we call mass to orbit. So that means we're able to put more satellites on orbit, whether for commercial or government purposes, and those are getting cheaper and cheaper per pound, which also gives us more opportunities to leverage space for various missions.
So you said 5 to 10 years ago we had roughly equal space launch capacity as China and Russia, but now we've substantially exceeded them, right?
Correct. Yes, Senator.
And what's been the driver over the last 5 to 10 years of that substantial increase? Is it ULA or is it SpaceX?
Predominantly SpaceX, yes, sir.
So if it wasn't for SpaceX, we might be in a position where we still are at near equivalence to China and Russia in space launch.
They certainly have been innovative and rapidly changed that market, yes, sir.
Thank you. General Cotton, you've testified in the past, as have your predecessors, that China has undertaken a breathtaking buildup of its nuclear arsenal. It used to have what is called minimal deterrence, a nuclear arsenal just sufficient for a second strike. Obviously now it's moving on to first strike capabilities, whatever its rhetoric is. I think the department estimates that it's doubled its nuclear arsenal since Xi Jinping took power. It projects it to double again by the end of this decade and maybe even double again by the middle of the next decade. Could you explain the kind of advantage this might provide China, not just in the nuclear balance of power, but also in a conventional conflict, say, if China decided to go for the jugular in Taiwan?
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Nice seeing you. I think, when we put in perspective where we were just, left of probably 2018, and we saw it as a nascent threat, and the breakout that my predecessor announced, you're right. What it does in changing the calculus in our strategy is now we must be prepared for 2 nuclear peers instead of 1. I would garner to say, Senator, included in that is 2 nuclear peers that have a transactional relationship that has blossomed over the last couple of years as well. So as we look at the capabilities that we're seeing on all 3 legs, you're absolutely right. Having an H-6N with long-range strike capability is not a regional hegemon weapon system. Having land-based ICBMs is not a regional hegemon weapon system. Building out their submarine forces and having hypersonic weapons that are dual-use capable and fobbed is not necessarily seen as a regional hegemon weapon system. So it makes us look at things a little differently, and our strategy has changed to compensate for that.
Thank you. I'll close on a couple points. I made them before. You've agreed with them before. I'd love to hear your agreement one more time. Some people say about our nuclear weapons that we spend way too much money on weapons we never use. I respond to them that we actually don't spend that much money on them. We may be spending some money modernizing them now compared to our total defense expenditures, but more importantly, we have used our nuclear weapons every single day going back 80 years this August to prevent the kind of war that the world saw twice in 20 years. Do you agree with that, General Cotton?
I absolutely agree with that, Senator.
Thank you. I want to finally add my note of agreement with our fantastic chairwoman, Senator Fisher, on what she said about the nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missile, also known as SLCM-N. The program held on by a thread throughout the Biden era, thanks to congressional support. And I'm glad that you acknowledge how important it is, and that if anything, we need to do everything possible to accelerate that capability. Thank you, gentlemen.